You are a fake. Art is a bourgeois decadence. It is too vain. We have moved too far away from God.
Florence is the freaking coolest. Whether you're looking for art, literature, political schemes, larger-than-life characters, things being set on fire, the historical context for the best Assassin's Creed game, or the single greatest dome in history, this city at the beating heart of the Renaissance has it all. Thing is, Florence seems an unlikely candidate for a civilization-changing rebirth of classical glory. Even within Italy, it wasn't nearly the most powerful player on the peninsula. Venice ruled the seas, and Rome held the papacy. So to find out what made little old Florence so special, and to see why their ideas had such a transformative impact on Italian art and culture, let's do some history. This video is brought to you by Audible. More on that later. Florence has a pretty quiet start. First founded by Julius Caesar as a military camp in 59 BC, Florence got caught in the up and down of the Roman and Byzantine empires, eventually getting nominally glomped by the Holy Roman Empire in the medieval period. But the Alps are kind of a pain to cross, and the HRE is closer to an unsupervised geopolitical kindergarten than an actual empire, so Florence and their Italian neighbors were essentially independent, just chilling out by themselves in the quiet Tuscan countryside through most of the Middle Ages. But Florence, as we know it, starts with the adoption of a new constitution in 1293, which outlined a republican system that placed power in the hands of the mercantile and artisan elite. Rather than dumb, stuffy aristocrats, Florence was governed by a citizen signoria, composed of 9 people chosen by the city's guilds, who each served on 2-month terms. These priori worked in tandem with specific side councils like the 10 of War and the 6 of Commerce. It was a small group, but since it rotated so insanely fast, lots of Florentines had a say in how their city worked. While it's certainly no Venetian republic, it got the job done pretty well for the next 2 centuries. Florence also had the good fortune to back the winning side in a power struggle between the Pope in Rome and the Emperor in Germany, so they got the rights to play middleman on papal tax collection. Shiny. It's also during this turn of the 1300s that Florence takes a recognizable shape by spending their newfound wealth on a flurry of construction projects. The government got a new house in the Palazzo della Signoria, and Florence started on the Church of Santa Croce, but by
That's the one I went to, the government Palazzo della Signoria. Right?
far, the most ambitious project was Santa Maria del Fiore, a magnificent new centerpiece church that promised to be the largest in the world. One problem was that the design was so darn big that the architects had no way to actually cap the thing with a dome that wouldn't just collapse under its own weight. And the second problem was a tiny little killjoy by the name of plague. See, for all the cash money that Venetian and Genoese traders brought back to Italy from the Near East, in 1347 they also brought along the Black Death, and a year later its devastation spread to Florence. The population dropped in half, entire families fell off the map, banks disappeared, farms went completely untended, and basically the entire ecosystem of medieval Tuscany collapsed overnight. To paraphrase contemporary accounts, this was un grande oof. But luckily, inconceivable amounts of death.
This is such a YouTube video from a bygone era where the guy says un grande oof. I love that.
Really sets the mood for writing poetry, so it's here that we get Boccaccio's masterwork, the Decameron, an Italian-styled 1001 Nights, except the framing device here is plague instead of princes. At the same time, the poet Petrarch was reinventing lyric poetry through the composition of his personal love sonnets. But we have to jump back half a century to give credit to Florence's greatest poet by far, our boy Dante. Exiled from the city in 1302, Dante soon began composition of his Divine Comedy, an era-defining self-insert fanfic that combined Christian theology with ancient Greek mythology in, dare I say it, an even bolder crossover than the MCU.
Oh my god. Dare you say it, sir. MCU reference, the boldest crossover. This is, oh my god, this is so awesome. This is like such a fucking epic bacon Reddit ass fucking YouTube video. I love it. No disrespect to overly sarcastic productions. This seems awesome.
All of Florence is getting beat up by plague. These 3 smart boys gave the city a head start on rediscovering ancient ideas and blending them into medieval Christian culture with a new focus on individualism. Things started looking up with the capture of Pisa in 1406, which gave the Florentines a direct route to the sea, more tax revenue, and
see, this is what I was talking about. They're like, bro, fuck Pisa. All my homies hate Pisa.
things started looking up with the capture of Pisa in 1406, which gave the Florentines a direct route to the sea, more tax revenue, and on-demand access to history's best architecture meme. And 1 decade later, the Pope awarded the honorable and extremely lucrative right of directly managing the papal treasury to a soon-to-be world-changing family, the Medici. With the enviable job of counting the coins in God's very own pocketbook, this family bank soon became the most influential.
This is their crescent, or crest. 6 balls, which I think is very weird. And apparently we don't know why they got the 6 balls. Some believe it's because they're like old medicine men. Some believe it's supposed to signify oranges. Some believe it's supposed to be like the impact of what it looks like after you like suck out poison. Ironic. You stole that from Anne? No, I stole that from Anne and the tour guide guy. And then the other is the other antiquated belief, which is probably not real. No, it's not from Dragon Ball Z, man, and it's not a spicy meatball. I don't know, some like fucking ancient guy fought a monster who also happened to be a mountain in Italy, and then the monster had a 6-headed like a club, and then when he slammed into the shield, that was the impact crater.
And well-funded in Italy. But the Medici, and the young Cosimo especially, had a uniquely ancient view of wealth, seeing it as a means to glorify both God and Florence through great public works rather than something to hoard in a bank vault swimming pool. Don't get me wrong, these guys lived large and made it known, but they had a refreshingly patriotic attitude towards their wealth and felt a moral responsibility to spend it on Florence's greatness through cultural patronage.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, it's in comparison to like their contemporaries, their counterparts, not contemporaries. Sure. But like looking at it from now, looking at it with my eyes currently, I'm like, these motherfuckers were not benevolent.
For instance, the Duomo wasn't just going to build itself after a century spent domeless, so the Medici financed its completion under the genius architect Filippo Brunelleschi. He invented radical new construction equipment and applied some straight-up wizardry to implement a self-reinforcing double dome, and without going off on a massive tangent, I'd say the results speak for themselves. Good dome. Meanwhile, our boy Cosimo returned from a brief year in exile in 1434 to effectively become the leading citizen of Florence. He didn't fully upend the Republic, but he pulled an Augustus and got really good at encouraging the guilds to appoint agreeable priori to the Signoria. Legal? Yes, but still pretty dubious. But with the funds of the Medici Bank in one hand and the reins of Florence in the other, Cosimo put everything that he had into the care of the city. From public buildings to privately commissioning artists like Donatello to even funding and stocking a public library to make the city's knowledge accessible to all. Cosimo loved the classics, and he even had a chief book scout who went on trips to the Eastern Mediterranean to bring back rare ancient manuscripts from the Greek and Islamic worlds. Cosimo was a
Their PR was crazy, and they passed down a history of some enlightened people, but we all know they were just some rich motherfuckers playing Monopoly in Tuscany. I mean, yeah, but I guess they did advance history quite a bit by doing this shit. It might have been a flex nuts type situation, but like, they did do a lot for the arts.
pretty cool cat, but his grandson Lorenzo took all this Renaissance-y business up to 11. He threw money at artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and Sandro Botticelli, whose combined talents included painting, drawing, sculpture, architecture, anatomy, and also tanks. Everything Cosimo did, Lorenzo did shinier, and only enhanced Florence's reputation as the place to go for long-lost knowledge and groundbreaking art. The Florentine Renaissance wasn't just about picking up ancient Greco-Roman ideas after a millennium hiatus, but it was a continuation of what Dante had started, of applying ancient ancient culture to a medieval Christian context with a deep focus on individual expression. This wasn't just a rebirth, this was radically new. See, I'm only biased towards liking Florence so much because I'm right. But for all his splendor, Lorenzo's Florence was not without trouble. Half a decade after a mining debacle in Volterra led to the city getting sacked, some conspirators in and around Florence decided that all that Medici banking money would feel a lot better clinking around in their pockets instead. The Pazzi family had already buddied up with Pope Sixtus and swiped the rights to manage the papal treasury, so the next—
Fuck these homies, dude. Fuck the Patsies, dude. All my homies hate the Pazzi family. You know what I'm saying?
logical step was to assassinate Lorenzo and his brother Giuliano and basically coup their way into ruling Florence. We've all had that thought, right? They'd wanted to kill them both simultaneously during—
RIP, I resubbed, but I didn't refresh, so I got clapped for posting a link. Yeah, but at least you won't see the top of the hour ad break right now. Because at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. And if you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe for $5. Or for free with a Twitch Prime. Or by getting gifted a sub from 34MKD50. That's right. Here's a 3-minute ad break now. $34MKD50. He is one of my wealthy patrons. I am like his Michelangelo. And by that I mean gay as fuck.
A dinner party, you know, in private, but when Giuliano didn't show, they called it off. The only other option was in the middle of Easter Mass at the Duomo. This had the added downside that it's in full view of the entire city and added a lot more complications, causing several conspirators to nope right on out of there. Because murder is fine, but don't make me do it in front of the pretty dome, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's because, like, these guys fucking love religion, dog. And these guys did this shit on Easter Sunday. It's big no-no. Don't do it in front of the pretty dome, please. Not in front of the dome, thank you. No, but like literally. Apparently their tell to pull out the swords was waiting for the priest to put the cross up like this. And then they were like, oh, it's a time. It's a time for the spicy meatball. A time to kill these Medici bastards. Which they did. Except they failed to kill one of them.
And Giuliano was killed, but Lorenzo survived on pure rage and proceeded to purge every trace of the Pazzi and their supporters from the city, confiscating all of their assets as an extra FU. Lorenzo significantly tightened his grip on Florence in the decade following the Pazzi conspiracy, but the power of the Medici began to wane, with their biggest revenue source being soured on account of all that attempted murder. But even with all this conspiratorial turmoil, Florence was starting to have an outsized impact beyond its Tuscan hills, via coinage, language, and all that sweet, sweet art. The gold florin of the Medici Bank became the standard currency across Italy and parts of Europe, and where florins went, Tuscan followed. This dialect was already well regarded in Italy because of Dante, Petrarch, and Boccaccio, but it became a lingua franca because of the far-reaching mercantile influence of the Medici. And soon other cities wanted in on the artistic action as well, so Leonardo got hired by Milan and Michelangelo went to Rome to go paint a pretty roof. When 99% of the Renaissance belongs to 1% of the Italians, we gotta redistribute that, you know? After Lorenzo's death in 1492, the incompetence of his first son Piero got the entire Medici family exiled, and into this power vacuum steps Girolamo Savonarola, a friar with a very particular attitude towards Florence's Renaissance splendor. Burn it down. Savonarola's bonfire of the Van—
Right. You are a fake. Art is a bourgeois decadence. It is too vain. We have moved too far away from God.
Vanities claimed countless artistic treasures in the name of restoring Florence to moral purity, and even the artist Botticelli torched several of his paintings and joined in Florence's collective swan dive back into the Dark Ages. 4 very long years later, Savonarola was burned to death by fed-up Florentines. It's like poetry. It rhymes. And for the next decade and a half, Florence was free of ruling families. In the eyes of one Niccolo Machiavelli, this was Florence in its truest republican form. To mark their newfound freedom, the Signoria commissioned the young Michelangelo to make what would become one of the city's greatest treasures, the David. Beyond being the most iconic work of classical realism, no biggie, this piece directly symbolized...
Gay as hell, dog. Let me tell you something. This guy loved men. Okay? He loved the male body so much. I love that you are now on your Tradcath art. You could not... It's so funny to say this about me. I'm probably less pro-Catholic than I ever have been. I spent pretty much the first hour talking about how insane it is that Catholics just go dig up graves and like chop their fucking like saints into bits and then put it inside of like religious like shit that they build, basically. Like the dome has a golden dome. The Duomo has a golden dome on top of it. And apparently inside of that massive ass golden dome at the tippy top of the Duomo is St. John. And when I say St. John, I don't mean like oh, that's the rumor. Like, no, they got his bones in there, dog. They take these motherfuckers, they chop them up. I didn't know this. It's so crazy. Calm down, I love you was a joke. Car accident survivor podcasters are getting really angry right now. Yeah, like, well, I know you were, okay, let's say you were joking. But there are a lot of podcasters. Podcasters only do two different arcs. They either go, oh, I love NATO, and I'm going to assume every fucking liberal, pro-American foreign policy position possible, and spend the rest of my life shitting on, like, every fucking random Tom, Dick, and Harry that I consider to be more left than me because they're the worst problems in America. Or they do the fucking Tradcath shit where they're like, actually, I'm leftist but transphobic because the real working class is transphobic and racist. And then they just become straight up racist. And then they convert to Catholicism for some reason. So yeah, when you make that joke, I'm like, okay, chill, dog. That's not me, okay? Calm down.
Florence's place in the world as a small player in a field of giants like France, Germany, and the Papal States. But, like David, while Tuscany may have been small, it was far from weak. Ultimately, the Medici weren't out of the picture for too long because Italy became the battleground for Europe's big fancy empires, and in 1512 the Medici were forcibly reinstated as de facto monarchs. People like Machiavelli weren't very thrilled about this, but people like Machiavelli were also tortured into keeping their mouths shut. During their brief exile, the Medici were busy in the Vatican and soon weaseled themselves into the papacy on two occasions, first with Leo X and again with Clement VII. In 1532, Clement solidified his family's hold on Florence by appointing Cosimo I as Duke of Florence, officially swapping the Republic with a hereditary monarchy. For the next 2 centuries, Medici dukes ruled over all of Tuscany. Though the Republic was well and truly dead, and it had never been harder to openly criticize the Medici, Florence's prosperity and artistic excellence didn't miss a beat. Cosimo I politely confiscated the opulent palace of the Pitti family in 1549 and built some sweet new gardens around it.
That's pretty tight too. The Pitti family, so they built like corridors. They built a corridor between the Pitti family home palace and the government building, and it's literally straight up. It's like just a row of buildings that directly tie the government building that I described to you earlier to this fucking palace. And then, but there's a river in between. So what did they do? They built a bridge over the river. Okay, and then they decided, and I don't know why this is such a weird thing, but they decided you can only sell jewelry on this river. So they built a bridge, but it's not really a bridge. It's basically a fucking, like, it's like a corridor that they built on top of the bridge. And that's where all the jewelry is sold. It's cool as fuck. I mean, it's still a bridge, which is kind of tight. Actually, they're copying that sentiment from Buddhist wanderers in India with bone relics as a whole lot of rituals. Okay, well, regardless, it's still kind of crazy.
And he hired architect Giorgio Vasari to build.
Yeah, this is the corridor.
A corridor across the Ponte Vecchio to connect Palazzo Pitti with his Uffizi, a massive new administration complex.
Yep. Timing. Yep, straight up. And apparently it's because they had to go through this every day, multiple times throughout the day, and they didn't want to get assassinated. So they were like, let's just fucking connect it with a goddamn corridor. Bro did not want to touch grass. Oh, 100%.
Adjacent to the old Palazzo della Signoria. You might know it today as the Uffizi Gallery, one of the best museums in Europe, no big deal. And 3 decades later, Duke Ferdinand replaced all of the butcher shops on the main bridge with goldsmiths because apparently Florence wasn't visibly rich enough yet. But probably my favorite product of the Grand Duchy is the Medici chapels at the back of the church.
And to this day, it's only jewelers there. Like, that entire bridge is just jewelers.
Church of San Lorenzo. Take a wild guess at why I like it so much. The centerpiece is the Chapel of the Princes, a towering mausoleum built for the Medici.
So this is the one I was talking about. This shit's crazy, bro. This is the one that the outside, Michelangelo just kind of gave up on the outside of it. But the inside of it is fucking insane.
Grand Dukes. It's incredibly swanky in there, but most hilariously, it's still under construction. The entire line of Medici Dukes died out before the ceiling even got its fresco, and that only happened because the lead architect was bullied into ditching his plans for a lapis lazuli mosaic and just putting something on the damn roof already.
So here's the other part about this. There's like tapestry inside of this thing that is literally not even painted. There's you can't see it in this photo. I took a photo of it. Oh, I think I posted it. Here, I'll show you. God, I'm teaching you guys so much about art history. It's fucking nuts. It's not fabric. No. No. It's a mosaic. Look at this shit. Stealing art? Yes. I stole from the Medici family by taking a photo. Here. Look at this. Look. This shit right here, what I'm pointing to with my mouse cursor, that right there, folks, apparently, that right there is not painted. Each individual piece, including the lapis lazuli that you can see here, the blue, okay? Each individual piece is not painted at all. Those are all, that's all fucking mosaic with rare stone. They painted this with stone, with gems, okay? And they wanted to do that to the top of it too. Bro, is it me or does this shit look kind of gaudy? I don't think so. I mean, the amount of fucking work that people put into it is crazy. Someone said, that's just pixel art, my dude. Oh my god, I'm gonna die. Alright. You guys are fucking heathens, dude. You're crazy. I mean, it is gaudy. I think you're right. It is gaudy for sure. But it's like the invention of gaudy. Anyway, a dying art. What's Gaudi? Antonio Gaudi, famous sculptor, and architect. I'm kidding. Well, he is an architect, but that's Gaudi is a word. It means like overly flashy. But also, Gaudi is a famous architect that constructed a shit ton of stuff in Barcelona. If you've ever been to Barcelona, you can tell by the fact that I'm saying Barcelona that I've been there. Okay, you 100% stole that from my name? Bro, my mother did not invent the history of art. She is but a mere art history professor. She did not invent art history. What the fuck is wrong with you? I am a little bit more learned on this subject matter as well. Yes, I learned a lot from her. But also, I have been to a lot of these places too. Oh my fucking god. Chat literally be like, dude, you're just stealing information from your doctor mom. She did invent me, that's true, technically. She did. It's such a weird thing to be like, wow, dude, I can't believe you're quoting basic art history shit.
Jumping back a century, Cosimo expanded Florence's horizons by conquering the Republic of Siena and building a naval base on the island of Elba. Florence's golden age at the forefront of history was certainly behind it, as the Renaissance had long since spread to the rest of Europe, and Florentine prestige had waned in comparison to these big shiny empires, but Florence was still prosperous, beautiful, and most importantly, in one piece. Rome, for one, could not say that last bit. But at the end of the day, Machiavelli's worst fears about a Medici monarchy would come true, as the last two Medici Grand Dukes were the worst crossover of lazy, spendthrift, and repressive, leaving Florence weak and nearly bankrupt. After them, Tuscany was swiftly gobbled up by the soon-to-be Archduke of Austria and Holy Roman Emperor. For the sake of narrative convenience, and also because European imperial politics are far too complicated for how boring they are, I'm going to fast forward a century here to 1859, when Tuscany happily jumped on board the Italian unification bandwagon and annexed themselves to the growing Kingdom of Italy. Florence even served as the kingdom's capital for a few years before the final conquest of Rome in 1870. After joining the kingdom, the Tuscan dialect soon became the basis for Universal Standard Italian, and Florence gave many of its most famous churches some finishing touches, which is to say, the front. Yeah, so as it happens, Santa Maria Novella was the only major church to actually have a finished facade since the Renaissance. The Duomo was basically faceless until the 1800s. But now that it's actually done, I think it's a
The only church that's still remaining as like faceless is the one with devoid of the facade, is the one that you saw the inside of. That's like crazy.
really neat touch that the red, white, and green color scheme of the cathedral is a perfect Italian tricolor. Mwah. So, with all this history behind us, we've got to answer our starting question. Why did the Renaissance start in Florence? Well, if it started anywhere else, it wouldn't have been the Renaissance. This movement was about rediscovering the ancient world in service of humanism, and what Florence may have lacked in power compared to its neighbors, it more than made up for in its peace.
Yeah, classical knowledge was still widely circulated in Ireland, the Byzantine Empire, and the Muslim world, and Sicily and Venice were melting pots of Eastern and Western cultures during the earlier Middle Ages. Florence, however, fundamentally changed both the focus of arts and the system of its creation by basically taking all that and bringing it back to the fucking Western dogs. Rediscovering the classics. Firenze. The Medicis also famously brought to the Western world inventions such as the fork. These motherfuckers weren't using forks, dog. Think about that. That's why, like, at least I guess, like, being of Turkish background, it's like, I always have talked about here in America, at least to my American audience, about how like the Islamic Golden Age carried big time. Like big time carried for a while when Europe was just, you know, not doing great. Rediscovering, you mean translating them from Arabic? Yeah.
people. From the great Medici patrons to their multi-talented creators, Florentines worked together over the course of centuries to push the boundaries of what was considered possible. And in doing so, they made Florence the world's capital of artistry. And honestly, I don't think we should have expected any less for a city whose name literally means flourishing. Cosimo's Public Library brought valuable knowledge to the people of Florence, and if you too want direct access to a world of literature, then you may be interested in today's sponsor, Audible. With enough audiobooks to make even the most seasoned of Renaissance Florentine scholars faint, Audible is the #1 source for all of your literary listening needs. Let's say you're walking home from the store and you want something insightful to listen to. Well, boom, Audible. Maybe you're at home making some food and you want a little something to stimulate your mind as you watch the spaghetti boil?
Ethical Reacts from fucking 5 years ago. This guy's Audible contract
if you want to learn more, what you gotta do is throw on this audiobook while playing. Audible members who sign up get a credit for any audiobook completely free every month, as well as 2 free Audible originals per month and additional discounts in the store. And just in time for the holidays, Audible is offering a half-price deal for your first 3 months if you sign up with our link on audible.com/overlysarcastic or text overly sarcastic to
work anymore. A lot of it is because of the influence of the Catholic Church. In the Dark Ages, there was an attitude in Western Europe that the world was literally hell and not worth learning about. The Renaissance was a return to human curiosity. I do think it's pretty funny. To consider some of the things that they didn't find out until much later. Like, the reason why a lot of the marble statues were just simply white was because they thought they were white because they were white when they recovered them. Except now we know that they were painted. Except 90% of the world still thinks that they were white. So it doesn't even matter. It's really fascinating to think about that, like, how you can forget things, or at least like how certain things are commonly known, and it's just out there for you to find out. Like, information is out there for you to figure out and find out, and yet we still keep misinterpreting historical facts over and over again. Many people in this chat, probably until this very moment, did not know that in the Roman era, the statues were not actually, the marble statues that you look at from the Roman era were not actually white and marble, but they were actually painted. This is like when Twitter users found out Tracer never had an ass. Dude, exactly. That's exactly what I mean. Yeah. Warhammer figure painting really more Roman than museums? Yeah.